Welcome to part one of The Black Crown. We hope you will enjoy this story from Starlight Stories. If you feel so moved, please like and subscribe. Now on to the story.
The Black Crown. The Black Crown. Some people were lucky enough to have one impassable life. Pause, then emphasize. Evan Hale had already used his. He had been born beneath a false sky on Sanctuary 7, a hidden colony where kidnapped humans and their descendants were bred, edited, tested, and occasionally killed by people attempting to turn human luck into something that could be patented. At 23, Evan escaped through an unlocked laboratory door, stole the evidence of what had been done to his people, and fled through the first matter beam he could reach. That matter beam deposited him in the middle of a live galactic entertainment program called the Ruin Game, and things had become complicated after that. Evan survived radioactive animals, homicidal robots, collapsing buildings, a chrome eagle with missile launchers, and several chains of improbable accidents that caused professional statisticians to question their choice of career. Along the way, he met Marla Venn, an asteroid investigator whose silver skin, perfect composure, and increasingly strained patience proved useful counterweights to a human whose principal tactical gift appeared to be falling correctly. Together, they reached the final broadcast, exposed Sanctuary 7 before trillions of viewers, and watched an entire criminal enterprise discover that public opinion was much more dangerous when accompanied by Federation marshals. Evan gave his winnings to the people of Sanctuary 7. He kept the paper restaurant hat. The Ruin Game had classified it as armor. Marla had pointed out that this was absurd, and Evan had pointed out that he was still alive, which he considered decisive evidence in favor of the original classification. Their relationship lasted for several good years, although not in the way either expected. They loved one another. Pause, then emphasize. That part was real. They also discovered that love did not automatically mean two lives would fit together. Marla's work took her into quiet rooms where wars were prevented before anyone heard about them. Evan's work increasingly took him wherever trafficked humans, missing colonies, or badly regulated genetic laboratories had made someone else's life miserable. They parted as friends. Actual friends, not the sort who promised to remain friends and then carefully avoided inhabiting the same star system. Marla still sent him messages beginning with, "I assume you are alive because I have not received official notification to the contrary." Evan generally answered, "Alive, hat intact." Then, 4 years after Sanctuary 7 opened to the real sky. Pause, then emphasize. Evan Hale heard another person's thoughts. His first reaction was to check for hidden speakers. His second was to suspect poisoning. His third was considerably less funny because the thought had come from a woman walking past him in a transit concourse. "I should have left him." Evan looked at her. The woman glanced back, frowned slightly, and thought, "Why is he staring at me?" Around them, the concourse hummed with luggage drones and transit announcements. Somewhere nearby, a food stall vented hot oil and garlic into the air. Evan could smell citrus disinfectant beneath it, the universal perfume of public transportation. He went to a doctor, then another, then a third under an assumed name. The first said his brain was normal. The second said his brain was definitely not normal. The third, an asteroid neurologist with the deeply unfortunate bedside manner of someone delighted by an unsolved problem, spent 6 hours examining Evan before announcing, "Your nervous system is performing functions unsupported by any known mechanism." Evan stared at him. Behind the doctor, a diagnostic array clicked softly as it cooled, each tiny metallic sound far too loud in the sterile room. "That sounds bad." "It is fascinating. Those are not opposites." "No, Mr. Hale. In this case, they are very much not opposites." Nothing in the surviving Sanctuary 7 records explained it. Nothing in known human genetics explained it. No implanted device was found, nor any pathogen parasite, or detectable alteration that had not already been present years earlier. Maybe Evan had been engineered, and the capability had awakened late. Maybe it was an accidental consequence of one of Sanctuary 7's many interventions. Maybe it had nothing to do with Sanctuary 7 at all. Maybe humanity had always contained rare neurological possibilities nobody had recognized because telepaths were not known to exist. The answer was unknown. Evan disliked unknown answers. He had spent much of his childhood being one. For 5 months, he told almost nobody. Then Dessa Orrel found him. Carthage Station had been built around an asteroid because somebody, several centuries earlier, had looked at 9 billion tons of useless iron tumbling through interplanetary space and said, reasonably enough, we could put shops in that. The result was a city wrapped around emptiness. Residential districts lined the outer shell. Transit rails ran through carved stone. Gardens hung inside enormous cylindrical cavities where artificial sunlight followed carefully programmed seasons. Asteroid architects had contributed the elegant central districts. Humans had contributed bars. Brindlefolk had contributed several monuments commemorating battles nobody else remembered occurring. Evan was standing beside a noodle stall when he heard a frightened thought behind him. Don't look at him. He kept eating. The noodles smelled of charred pepper, soy, and something vaguely marine that the vendor had assured him was not technically a mollusk. Don't look at him. Don't look at him. Pause, then emphasize. I think he knows. Evan chewed more slowly. A tram slid through the concourse behind him with a low magnetic whine. Its arrival tone chimed twice. He definitely knows. He sighed and turned. The Varethi girl behind him froze. She was 17, perhaps, slight even by Varethi standards, with dark bronze skin that carried the faint polished stone sheen typical of her species. Large copper eyes stared at him. Thin throat frills lay folded along either side of her neck, except the tip of the left one. That little section refused to lie flat. It quivered when she was nervous, and at the moment it was vibrating like an overworked engine mount. Evan pointed toward it. You should probably know that your left frill gives you away when you're nervous. The girl's hands flew to her throat. What? Evan realized immediately that he had made the situation worse. Never mind. I shouldn't have said that. She narrowed her eyes. Then very deliberately she thought, can you hear me? Evan looked away. You can hear this. No, I can't. You answered me. Coincidence. I didn't speak. Evan lifted one shoulder. Then it was a very persuasive coincidence. Her throat frills flared wide enough to attract the attention of a Varethi male carrying shopping bags. He gave them a concerned glance and increased his pace. The girl moved directly in front of Evan. My name is Dessa Orrel. Evan Hale. I know who you are. That sentence is rarely reassuring. My mother needs help. There were words people used when they were trying to manipulate someone. Emergency. Only you. Please. Evan had spent enough time around desperate people to recognize them. Dessa did not use any of those words. She simply stood there trying not to cry. Behind her fear was one thought, repeating with horrible simplicity. She's getting worse. The station seemed quieter around Evan for a moment, although it was not. Cups still clinked behind the counter. A cleaning drone still buzzed against the floor. Someone laughed across the concourse. Evan's expression changed. Tell me what's wrong with your mother. Dessa swallowed. There is someone else inside her. Leland Orrel disliked Evan immediately. That was useful. People who wanted something from him usually tried charm first. Leland tried the door. My daughter made a mistake, she said, keeping one hand on the apartment door as if prepared to close it in Evan's face. Dessa stood behind her mother. No, I did not. The apartment smelled faintly of roasted grain, clean fabric, and the resinous oil Varethi used on their wooden furnishings. Somewhere deeper inside, a ventilation fan clicked once every few seconds. Lilane's throat frills flattened. Unlike Dessa's rebellious little frill-tip, Lilane's obeyed her almost perfectly. Almost. A tiny ripple passed through them whenever Evan looked directly at her. She was striking, not asteroid perfect. Asteroid beauty had geometry to it. Lilane looked as if geometry had been taught to run. She was lean, long-limbed, and balanced lightly on her feet. Her skin was darker than Dessa's, charcoal bronze with faint mineral iridescence at her temples and shoulders. Copper eyes watched Evan with contained suspicion. Her long black hair was bound at the nape of her neck with a plain metal clasp. Her hands caught his attention. Long fingers, calloused palms, not academic hands and not entirely civilian hands either. "Former security?" Evan asked. Lilane stared at him. Dessa stared too. Evan winced. "Sorry, that wasn't telepathy." Lilane's voice became colder. That sentence did not improve matters. "Your stance gave you away. Right foot back, doorway between me and Dessa, line of sight on the kitchen and balcony. You haven't stopped tracking my hands since I arrived." Lilane glanced down once, then returned her eyes to him. "Emergency response. Former. Do you feel any better knowing I guessed?" "No." "Fair enough." Dessa slipped past her mother. Mother let him inside. "I have not invited him inside. He's already standing in the doorway. That counts culturally." "It does not count culturally." Evan looked from one to the other. Family arguments had a particular sound, even when conducted partly with throat frills. "Lilane," he said, "Dessa says you're hearing another voice." Lilane's eyes flicked toward her daughter. "Dessa talks too much." "Only when people refuse to listen." "That is most of the time." "Exactly." Evan almost smiled. Lilane noticed. "Do not encourage her." "I didn't do anything." "You considered it." Evan froze. Dessa grinned. Lilane's mouth twitched. For 1 second the apartment became ordinary. A mother, a daughter, a stranger at the door. Then Evan heard a thought. Not Dessa, not Lilane. Pause, then emphasize. Kill him. Every muscle in Evan's body went still. The voice continued with terrible calm. "He is physically strong, but the throat remains vulnerable. Strike first. Use the ceramic blade in the kitchen. 6 steps." Evan became aware of the quiet hiss of the ventilation grill and the smell of hot metal from the kitchen's induction surface. 6 steps. He looked at Lilane. Her copper eyes widened. He did not need telepathy to read that expression. "You heard it," she whispered. Dessa stopped smiling. Evan nodded. Something behind Lilane's eyes seemed to lean closer. Human. Evan's pulse jumped. "Interesting." Lilane shut her eyes. The second voice vanished. When she opened them again, her control had returned. "Now you understand why I wanted you to leave." Evan looked at Dessa. Her left frill tip had gone perfectly still. That frightened him more than the trembling. He stepped inside. The Varethi had an old expression, to grow a black crown. It referred to the moment anger stopped being an emotion and became an identity. Children were warned not to feed grudges lest the black crown sit too firmly. Soldiers used the term for officers who became addicted to command. Politicians used it for their opponents. Lilane used it for the thing inside her. "It began 12 years ago," she said as they sat around a low table. Dessa had placed herself beside her mother, and Evan noticed that she always did that, never opposite, always beside, ready to touch her, ready to run with her, ready, perhaps, to restrain her. A kettle clicked softly behind them as it cooled. At first it wasn't a voice. It was more like pressure, suggestions. "What kind of suggestions?" "Violent ones, mostly." Dessa looked at her. Leland corrected herself, usually violent. Evan leaned back. Can you give me an example? Leland's throat frills tightened. A supervisor insulted me. I imagined breaking his wrist. That's not necessarily abnormal. For how long do humans normally imagine the breaking? Evan paused. That depends heavily on the supervisor. Dessa covered a smile. Leland did not. 6 hours. Evan's humor disappeared. I knew precisely how to do it. I knew where to do it, what the medical response time would be, and which camera angles were obscured. And eventually, the pressure became a voice. Yes. What does it want? Leland looked at him. Safety. That answer was unexpected. Dessa's hands tightened together. Leland continued. It believes every threat should be eliminated before it becomes dangerous. Threats to you. To Dessa, to me, eventually to anyone it categorizes as belonging to us. Evan frowned. It has categories. It has plans. The room felt colder. Have you ever lost control? Leland's frills went tight against her neck. Dessa answered for her. Yes. Dessa. He needs to know. Leland looked away. Dessa spoke carefully. 3 years ago, a man followed me from training hall. Evan said nothing. He had followed me before. I didn't tell Mother at first. Leland's fingers curled. Dessa looked at Evan. She disappeared one night. Leland's voice was flat. I woke in a maintenance tunnel. What happened to him? He lived. Dessa added, barely. Leland looked at her daughter. He did not follow you again. Mother, that is not the point. I am stating a fact. You broke 17 bones. The crown broke 17 bones. Dessa's eyes flashed. With your hands. That landed. Leland's face tightened. The little involuntary ripple moved through her throat frills. Fear, not fear of Dessa, fear of herself. Evan knew that kind of fear. He had once looked at Sanctuary 7's genetic records and wondered which parts of him belonged to people who had designed him. He spoke carefully. Can I touch your hand? Leland looked at him sharply. Why? When I touch someone, I hear more. How much more? I don't know yet. Dessa stared at him. You don't know. I'm new at this. You are the galaxy's first human telepath. Allegedly. Who else would it be? I'd actually prefer competition. It would reduce expectations. Leland studied him for several seconds, then slowly placed her hand on the table. Long fingers, dark polished skin, a faint old scar crossing the knuckle of her middle finger. Evan put his hand over hers. Her skin was warmer than he expected. The apartment vanished. He stood in rain, warm rain. Pause, then emphasize, black rain. It struck stone roofs, copper railings, glass canopies. The sound surrounded him in a million small impacts, not loud but total, like static given weight. It fell through a city of narrow bridges and dark stone towers. Varethi architecture. He knew that somehow, and he also knew where he was. Leland's childhood city, a memory, but not a passive one. The streets smelled of wet mineral dust and the sweet resin of flowering trees somewhere beyond sight. A 6-year-old Leland ran barefoot through an alley, then a 12-year-old, then an adult in emergency response armor. All disappeared into the rain. Evan turned. Leland stood behind him. She looked down at herself. This is ridiculous. My mind actually has weather. Evan almost laughed from relief. Mine probably has several badly maintained cafeterias, so I wouldn't judge yourself too harshly. A bell rang, one deep note, then another. Leland froze. Every window in the city went dark. Evan, something is coming. He heard it, footsteps beneath the street. No, not footsteps, something too large for footsteps. The entire city trembled. A voice came from the rain. You entered. Leland whispered, "Get out of here while you still can." Evan looked toward the avenue ahead. A figure stood there. Female, tall, Varethi, Leland, but not quite. The same dark skin, the same face, the same copper eyes. Stronger, straighter, perfectly calm. A crown of black glass thorns rose around her head. She walked toward them. The rain stopped touching her. Evan Hale. Evan's stomach tightened. You know who I am. She knows you. The crown glanced at Leland. I know everything she knows. You are not her. The crown smiled. That is what she prefers to believe. Leland stepped forward. You do not speak for me. I speak whenever you are too frightened to. The city changed. The towers became battlements. Bridges became firing platforms. Black-armored figures filled every roof. The sound of rain became the metallic clatter of weapons being raised. Evan felt the attack before it came. The crown moved, too fast. He raised a hand instinctively. The street between them folded upward. Stone became a wall. The crown struck it. The wall shattered with a report like thunder. Evan stared at his own hand. Apparently, I did that. Leland shouted, This is not the moment for professional development. The crown hit him. The world broke. Dessa heard her mother scream. She had been monitoring pulse, oxygenation, vascular pressure, and every neurological metric Evan's rented medical system could produce. None of them had prepared her for Leland arching off the couch as if something had driven current through her spine. Evan, you need to come back now. He did not respond. Blood slid from his nose. His fingers clenched around Leland's hand. The medical unit began emitting a shrill, alternating alarm. Dessa silenced it because the sound was making it impossible to think, and suddenly the room seemed too quiet except for Leland's ragged breathing. Dessa grabbed Evan's shoulder, then hesitated. He had told her not to break contact unless one of them stopped breathing. Leland screamed again. Dessa's frills flared so hard they hurt. Mother, please come back. Inside, the crown hurled memories like weapons. Leland at her husband's funeral. Leland holding infant Dessa during a station fire. Leland kneeling beside a dead emergency worker. Leland hearing a doctor say, "We did everything we could." The scent of smoke filled the city, then antiseptic, then heart wiring. Every fear became a soldier. Every humiliation became a knife. Every threat to Dessa became artillery. Evan fought with things he did not understand. Thought became structure, will became force. He stopped falling buildings by deciding they had never fallen. He crossed distances because distance seemed unnecessary. The crown learned just as quickly. You are strong. Evan drove it backward. People keep telling me that. Not physically. The crown smiled, although that too. Leland screamed. Evan looked toward her. That was the mistake. The crown's hand entered his chest. There was no blood. There did not need to be. Pain exploded through him anyway. The crown leaned close. Its breath smelled faintly of rain and iron. You and I will understand each other. Evan grabbed its wrist. I sincerely doubt that. He pushed. Everything turned white. He woke on the floor. Dessa was shouting. Leland was convulsing. Evan's head felt as though someone had driven a steel wedge between the hemispheres of his brain. He crawled to the medical controls. Give her the muscle suppressant, then the vascular stabilizer. Dessa slapped the first control, then the second. Evan, you're bleeding badly. I noticed. Blood had reached his collar. His left eye would not focus. The room smelled sharply of antiseptic foam, sweat, and blood. Leelaine made a choking sound. Evan abandoned the panel and grabbed her shoulders. Leelaine, listen to me. Come back. Her eyes opened. Copper, only copper, no black. She looked at him. For several seconds she couldn't speak. Then she whispered, "Did you win?" Evan sat back against the wall and held a cloth beneath his nose. "No, I didn't win." Leelaine shut her eyes. "Good." Dessa stared at her. "How can that possibly be good?" Leelaine's lips moved faintly. "Because if he'd told me it was easy, I would know he was either a liar or an idiot." Evan managed a weak smile. Those categories overlap more than most people admit. Leelaine opened one eye. "You came back." "So did you." Her eye closed again. "Then we will call it a temporary victory." Evan looked at the medical display. Her neurological stress markers were terrible. Temporary. Pause, then emphasize. That word frightened him. Leelaine needed 11 days to recover. For the first 2 she could not stand without help, and she hated that. For the first 3 her right hand shook. She hated that more. On the 4th night, Evan found her sitting beside the apartment window while Carthage Station's artificial evening turned the inner gardens gold. She held a cup. The cup trembled against its saucer with a tiny porcelain tick. Evan looked away. "Thank you," Leelaine said. "For what?" "For pretending you did not notice." Evan sat opposite her. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Human liar." Varethi ingrate. The corner of her mouth moved. The tea smelled herbal and bitter, something like mint crossed with smoke. Evan had hated it the first time he tried it. Leelaine considered that proof of sophistication. The tremor worsened, so she set the cup down. For a while they watched people crossing the garden paths below. Through the glass came the faint, damp earth scent from the station's night irrigation cycle. Leelaine finally said, "You saw things in there." "Yes." "My husband." "Yes." "Dessa as a child." "Yes." "The man in the tunnel." "Yes." Her frills pressed flat. "I dislike you knowing all of that." "That seems completely reasonable." "You are very calm about it." "I'm not calm. I'm just trying not to make it worse." She looked at him. Evan reached inside his jacket and pulled out a folded paper hat. Old, creased, faded. Big Alice atomic burgers, service with a smile. Leelaine stared. "What is that supposed to be?" "Armor." "No, it isn't." "Official classification." "By whom?" "A homicidal entertainment system." "That does not strengthen your argument." Evan turned the hat over in his hands. The old paper still carried, impassibly, the faintest trace of smoke and cooking grease from a place that no longer existed. "When I escaped Sanctuary 7, I ran." Leelaine waited. "I left 12,000 people behind." "You later saved them." "Yes." "You could not have saved them by staying." "I know." "Then why does it still trouble you?" Evan looked down at the hat. "Because knowing and feeling are handled by different departments, and they don't share paperwork efficiently." Leelaine looked at him for a long moment. He continued, "I still dream about the doors closing behind me." Her expression softened. Evan folded the paper hat again. "You showed me yours, whether either of us intended that or not, so I'm showing you mine." That was the beginning, not of romance, not yet, something slower. After every battle, they talked. It became their rule. If Evan was permitted into Leelaine's mind, Leelaine was permitted one question he had to answer honestly afterward. She claimed this created balance. Evan claimed it was extortion. Dessa claimed both adults required supervision. All 3 were correct. The second battle began 6 weeks later. Leland had recovered, mostly. The crown had become quieter, mostly. Then it began whispering to Dessa, not telepathically, through Leland's mouth while she slept. Dessa woke at 03:12 to find her mother standing beside her bed. Eyes closed, frills relaxed, speaking softly. "You should leave him, Dessa. He makes us vulnerable. He knows too much." The apartment's night cycle ventilation whispered through the ceiling. Outside, a cargo tug passed the window with a distant bass thrum that Dessa could feel more than hear. She sat up. "Mother, wake up." Leland opened her eyes. She had no memory of getting out of bed. The next morning she called Evan. He came immediately. That frightened Dessa. People said immediately when they meant after transit, obligations, preparation. Evan arrived 20 minutes after the call, hair uncombed, shirt half-buttoned, paper hat accidentally sticking from one jacket pocket. He smelled faintly of cold station air and coffee. Leland looked him over. "Did you sleep in your clothes?" "Some of them." "Why?" "I was tired enough that the distinction stopped mattering." "You own pajamas." "That feels like speculation." Then he saw her expression. The humor vanished. "What happened?" They told him. He listened, then said, "We go back in." Dessa's throat frills flared. "The last attempt nearly killed both of you." "The last time, we had no idea what we were doing." "And now?" Evan looked at Leland. "Now we know slightly more." "That is not reassuring." "It's the best category currently available." Leland held out her hand. "Do it." This time the crown did not attack Leland. It attacked Evan. He entered the black rain. Then the rain became fluorescent light, white walls, a marked circle on the floor. Evan stopped. No. He knew this room. The laboratory wall stood before him. Behind the transparent alloy was Dr. Ilya Voss, except her eyes were black. "Subject 7, Hale," she said. "Step onto the marked circle." Evan knew it was false. He knew where he was. He knew this was Leland's mind using his memory. Knowing did not matter. His body remembered before reason could intervene. The metal wrist tag, the scanners, the smell of antiseptic and bitter fruit, the faint electrical buzz of fluorescent light fixtures, people observing, always observing. A door opened behind him with the exact pneumatic sigh from his childhood. Children stood there. Sanctuary 7 children. Some he recognized, some he did not. One girl asked, "Why did you leave us?" Evan closed his eyes. "You aren't real." Dr. Voss smiled, the crown's smile. "You saved yourself first." "I came back." "Later." Evan's fists clenched. The crown stood beside him now, wearing Leland's face. Luck is merely selfishness, survived long enough to become inspiring. Evan hit it. The laboratory exploded. Outside, Leland's heartbeat became irregular. Dessa's fingers flew over the controls. "Come on, Evan. Whatever it is showing you, come back." Her left frill tip trembled. The monitor emitted a soft, repeating tone. "Please come back." Inside, Evan fought too hard. Every strike hurt the crown. Every strike shook the world. He did not notice at first. Then he heard Leland scream. Not the crown, Leland. The floor cracked beneath his feet. He looked down. There was blood beneath the cracks, her blood. The entire landscape was her. The buildings, the sky, the streets. He was destroying the battlefield. Pause, then emphasize. The battlefield was a woman. Evan stopped. The crown drove a black blade through him. He collapsed. The crown crouched beside him. Compassion is such an exploitable weakness. Evan looked up. Yeah, humans have several. The crown tilted its head. Evan smiled faintly. Doesn't mean they're mistakes. He grabbed the blade, and pulled the crown closer, then did the one thing it did not expect. He released it, not attacked. Pause, then emphasize, released. The crown staggered, the world changed. Leland appeared between them, not fully, a translucent outline, but there. She shoved Evan toward the surface. Get out. What about you? Get out of my mind, before you destroy both of us. The world vanished. Leland forgot Dessa's birth for 4 hours. That ended the battles. Evan decided. Dessa objected. Leland did not. That surprised them both. You agree with him? Dessa demanded. Leland sat on the couch with both hands wrapped around a cup because one still trembled. Yes, I agree with him. But it's getting stronger. I know. We cannot simply stop. We can stop this. Dessa turned on Evan. You promised you would help. I am helping. By quitting. By refusing to turn your mother's brain into a battlefield until there's nothing left worth saving. Dessa's frills flared. That's easy for you to say. Evan went still. Dessa immediately regretted it. She said nothing. Neither did he. A delivery drone passed outside the apartment, humming faintly through the wall. Then Evan nodded. Yeah, it is easier for me. He picked up his coat. Dessa's fear turned instantly to panic. Evan, please, I didn't mean. Leland spoke sharply. Dessa. Evan looked at the girl. I'm not leaving you. Her eyes filled. I'm going downstairs to get food. That's all. Dessa stared. Oh. I do that periodically. Leland looked at him. Frequently. I am from a DNA world. We require maintenance. Dessa made a broken laugh. Evan put on his coat, then looked at Leland. No more invasions. She nodded. No more. It was the right decision. It nearly killed thousands of people. 3 weeks later, Leland disappeared. Dessa woke to an empty apartment. Her mother's bed was made. Her emergency response jacket was gone. So was a secured tool kit Leland had not opened in 6 years. The apartment felt wrong without her. Too quiet. Even the faint herbal scent of Leland's morning tea lingered in the kitchen, making the absence worse. Dessa called Evan. He answered on the first pulse. She's gone. Evan was already standing. How long? I don't know. Trackers. Disabled. Accounts. Nothing. Evan closed his eyes. Nothing. Then a voice touched the edge of his mind. Distance should have prevented it. It didn't. Human. His eyes opened. Dessa heard the change in his breathing. What did you hear? Serenity Gate. How do you know? The Crown told me where to come. Serenity Gate Medical Center was asteroid. You could tell because the emergency department was quieter than most species libraries. Silver-white corridors curved around living gardens. Surgical suites hummed with precision systems. Intensive care units held patients whose bodies would have been considered unrecoverable a generation earlier. The air smelled of filtered oxygen, antiseptic, and faintly floral asteroid cleaning compounds. Somewhere beyond a sealed wall, an infant began crying and was quickly soothed. 9,400 patients, nearly 6,000 staff, 7 neonatal wards. Asteroid hospitals used compact antimatter catalysis for certain fabrication and surgical processes. Leland had helped write the station's emergency plans. The Crown knew every word. By the time Evan and Dessa reached the hospital, 3 internal security zones had failed. No casualties, a silver-skinned security officer told them. 3 officers rendered unconscious, 1 fracture. Evan frowned. No deaths at all. None. Dessa understood first. It's conserving violence. The officer looked at her. Explain. The Crown doesn't care about the guards. It only removes obstacles. Evan's jaw tightened. Where is the antimatter plant? The officer's perfect expression cracked. Sublevel 32. Evan ran. Dessa followed. Their footsteps struck the polished corridor in two very different rhythms, Evan heavy and fast, Dessa almost silent. Varethi were faster, Evan was stronger. Neither noticed which advantage mattered. Lelaine stood inside the antimatter control chamber. Her eyes were open. The Crown wore her completely. No theatrical black irises, no snarling. That would have been easier. She looked calm. Her frills rested loosely. Her hands worked the controls with professional economy. Cooling pumps thrummed under the floor. The chamber smelled faintly of ozone and chilled metal. Dessa stopped 10 meters away. Mother, I need you to hear me. Lelaine looked up. The smile was wrong. Hello, Dessa. Dessa's breath caught. Evan moved between them. The Crown tilted Leland's head. You are still doing that. Doing what? Standing between danger and people smaller than you. Old habit. Expensive habit. Evan glanced toward the control board. What are you doing? Correcting a future. Dessa stared at the antimatter status display. You'll kill everyone in this hospital. Yes. Why? The Crown looked at her. Because the asteroid will retaliate. Dessa went pale. Evan understood. A Varethi terrorist destroys an asteroid hospital. Publicly. Thousands die. Yes. Asteroid security hardens. Yes. Varethi radicals respond. Yes. And then you get your war. The Crown smiled. Predictable systems are useful. Dessa whispered, why would you want that? The answer came from Lelaine's mouth. Because in war, no one will question the need for people like me. Evan felt sick. The Crown wasn't trying to destroy Lelaine. It was trying to create a universe in which Lelaine's worst instincts were necessary. Dessa stepped around Evan. Mother, listen to me. The Crown's hand moved to the trigger. Evan started forward. No, Dessa said. He stopped. Dessa's voice shook. When Father died, you slept on my floor. The Crown watched her. I was 8 years old. You said the bed was uncomfortable. Dessa stepped back. It was your own bed. A tiny ripple moved through Leland's throat frills. Dessa saw it. So did Evan. You burned breakfast for 6 months. The Crown's expression tightened. You hate Sweetleaf. Stop talking. You still eat it when grandmother visits. Dessa. You sing when you clean. I do not sing. Dessa laughed through tears. There you are. Lelaine blinked. One copper eye softened. The Crown tightened its grip on the trigger. Evan reached, not a full invasion, just contact, a telepathic shove against the door. The Crown turned toward him. For 1 second, its attention left Dessa. That was enough. Dessa moved. Varethi's speed was a remarkable thing. One instant she was crying 10 meters away. The next, she hit her mother around the waist. The trigger flew. Evan caught it. Almost. It bounced off his fingertips, struck a console, flipped once, and landed on its safety edge. The detonation sequence aborted with a descending 3-note chime. Dessa stared at it. Evan stared at it. A blue diagnostic panel lit automatically. Accidental input, safe mode. Dessa looked at him. Your luck remains deeply offensive. We can discuss that later. Lelaine screamed, this time her voice. They caught her together. Lelaine woke in the hospital she had tried to destroy. Asteroid irony was understated, but not absent. Her physician was silver-skinned, elegant, and clearly offended by the entire situation. You require additional rest. I have rested for 11 hours. You attempted mass murder yesterday. That occurred before the resting. Your distinction is medically irrelevant. Lelaine looked toward Evan. I like her. She's growing on me too. The physician stared at them both. I am still present. Dessa sat beside the bed. Her left frill tip trembled. Lelaine saw it. Her humor vanished. She reached for her daughter's hand. Dessa grabbed it. The room smelled of clean linen and a faint medicinal citrus. Somewhere in the corridor, a transport cart rolled past with a soft wheel rattle. Neither spoke for a while. Eventually, Lelaine looked at Evan. No more entering my mind. No more entering your mind. No amplifier. Evan blinked. I didn't mention an amplifier. You made that face. What face? The human face that means you are about to build something regrettable. Dessa nodded. I know that face too. Traitors. Lelaine squeezed Dessa's hand. What do we do now? Evan leaned back. He had considered surgery, drugs, meditation, neural dampers, cognitive partitioning. Every approach either failed or risked giving the crown more control. There was one thing they had not tried. It was scientifically indefensible, historically common, possibly irresponsible. Evan smiled. Lelaine's eyes narrowed. Whatever you are about to suggest, my answer is already no. I haven't said anything. You smiled. I smile all the time. Not like that. Dessa looked suspicious. What are you thinking? Evan folded his arms. Humanity has an old tradition for unsolvable problems. Lelaine's frills tightened. Meditation. Older. Prayer. Less dignified. Dessa stared at him. Evan said, we get drunk. Silence. A monitor beeped twice. The asteroid physician looked at him. Absolutely not. Evan pointed at her. That sounds like medical bias. It is medical education. They waited until Lelaine was healthy, mostly because the doctor threatened to report Evan personally to Marla Venn if he did not. That was surprisingly effective. Varethi did not tolerate human ethanol well, but they had their own intoxicants. Lelaine purchased a dark green bottle of Velish. Evan sniffed it. His eyes watered. The smell was fungal, smoky, and sharply medicinal. What is this made from? Fermented cavern fungus. Evan stared at her. Why would anyone ferment cavern fungus? Tradition. He looked offended. You mocked humanity. I had incomplete data. Dessa supervised and took the responsibility far too seriously for two adults hoping to embarrass themselves in peace. Dosage monitor. Yes, Evan said. Emergency metabolic neutralizer. Yes. Neural monitor. Yes. Hydration. Dessa. Yes. We are attempting an ancient cultural treatment. You are poisoning your brains. Technically. Then I am supervising. Lelaine raised her glass. To children becoming irritatingly competent. Dessa's frills flared. Evan raised his, and to poor decisions made responsibly. Their glasses clicked. They drank. Velish tasted like wet soil, pepper, smoke, and personal regret. Evan coughed hard enough to make Dessa laugh. Lelaine smiled. DNA world. That does not mean I enjoy being poisoned. The first hour did nothing. The second loosened Lelaine's frills. That was astonishing. Normally they moved in small, controlled ripples. Now they seemed to have independent opinions. Evan stared. "Your neck is drunk." Leland tried to look offended. Her throat frills fluttered cheerfully. "Dessa, please make him stop looking at me. I don't think that's medically available." Evan laughed. Leland did too. A human music stream played quietly from the room speakers, something old and string-heavy. Evan had selected it because he claimed proper bad decisions needed accompaniment. Then Leland stopped laughing. Her eyes widened. Dessa was immediately alert. What changed? Leland looked inward. "It's quiet." Evan's smile disappeared. "The crown." "Still there," she touched her temple, "but it feels dull, slow." Evan reached carefully with his mind. For months, the crown had felt like a black blade pressed against the inside of Leland's consciousness. Now it felt distant, slow, annoyed. Then a thought arrived. This is intolerable. Evan began laughing so hard, he nearly fell out of his chair. Leland pointed at him. "Do not laugh at my condition." "I'm not laughing at your condition. I'm laughing because the genocidal alternate personality is drunk. That does not make it funny. It makes it a little funny." Dessa covered her face. "I regret agreeing to supervise either of you." For 3 hours, the crown weakened. Then Leland vomited into an ornamental planter. The room immediately filled with the sour smell of Velesh and the faint floral scent of whatever had once lived in the planter. The next morning, Evan woke beneath the dining table. Leland was asleep, sitting upright against the couch. Dessa stood over them with a medical scanner. Evan opened one eye. "What do the numbers say?" The crown's activity dropped 74%. He smiled. "Science." "You also attempted to teach Mother a song about a yellow submarine." Leland groaned from the couch. "Unfortunately, I remember that." Dessa looked at Evan. Was the submarine historically important? "Historically unclear." Leland raised her head. "We are never doing this again." Evan considered. "Agreed." A pause. "Unless it becomes necessary." Leland thought about it. "Unfortunately, also agreed." The Velesh gave them a clue. The crown depended on available cognitive capacity, not entirely, but enough. So humanity offered another ancient tradition. Exhaustion. The first training session lasted 4 hours. Dessa watched from the station athletic center. The room smelled of rubberized flooring, metal, recycled air, and the faint mineral scent of too many bodies working hard. Evan and Leland ran. Varethi were quick, very quick. Leland moved around the track like a dark ribbon being pulled by the wind. Her footfalls were almost silent. Evan's were not. He came around each lap with the steady thud of a man who had evolved on a planet that expected its residents to absorb punishment rather than avoid it elegantly. He was still running when Leland stopped. She stared at him. "Why are you not tired?" "I am tired." "You have been running for 2 hours." "Earth." That is not an explanation. Galactic medical journals disagree. They moved to resistance training. Evan lifted weights that made Leland's ears flatten. The equipment creaked faintly under loads, calibrated for species considerably lighter than him. Leland then took him to the agility course and humiliated him. She vaulted a barrier. Evan went through it. The barrier snapped with a sharp plastic crack. It was designed for Varethi mass. It was not designed for Evan. He emerged carrying part of it. Leland stared. "Did you just break the course?" "It was in my way." Dessa shouted from the observation rail. "Human solution." Evan pointed at her. "Exactly." Then came sparring. Leland's old emergency training returned. She was precise, fast, flexible. She kicked Evan in the ribs. He grunted. She kicked him harder. He caught her ankle. Lilane's other leg came up. Evan discovered that Varethi hips possessed opinions about skeletal limits that humans did not share. He hit the mat with a sound that made two nearby athletes turn. Lilane stood over him. Would you like to explain this using Earth again? Evan stared at the ceiling. Earth is temporarily closed. 5 hours later, both lay motionless on the floor. Their breathing echoed faintly off the training hall walls. Dessa approached. How do you feel? Lilane whispered. I no longer possess sufficient energy for genocide. Evan lifted one hand. It dropped. Put that sentence in the paper. Dessa checked the neural monitor, then checked again. Her expression changed. 81% reduction. Lilane opened one eye. Evan smiled weakly. Human tradition. Lilane closed the eye again. I hate human tradition. You keep using it. Desperation lowers standards. While the adults attempted to defeat evil through exercise and questionable beverages, Dessa researched. She had always been good at questions. Now she became dangerous with them. She searched modern neurology first. Nothing. Then psychiatric records. Nothing. Then emergency reports, criminal archives, historical biographies, military tribunals, religious confessions, old family journals. The archive room where she worked was almost silent, except for the soft hiss of the climate system and the occasional chiming acknowledgement of a retrieved file. The air smelled dry, faintly dusty despite the station's filtration. The pattern appeared slowly. A Varethi general 6 centuries earlier who abruptly became obsessed with preventive war. A provincial ruler who executed entire households because their descendants might someday oppose her. An admiral who began speaking about the second voice before ordering orbital bombardment against a surrendered city. A philosopher who wrote that mercy was merely violence delayed. A queen whose daughter recorded, Mother sometimes begs me to lock the door before the other mother wakes. Dessa stopped reading for a while after that. Then continued. She found 37 probable cases, 12 strong cases, 5 almost certain. Every one ended badly: execution, assassination, suicide, war, massacre. In one case, a family killed the afflicted man while he slept. No cure, no recovery, no miracle hidden in forgotten text, nothing. Dessa sat alone in the archive room staring at the final list. For months, she had believed history would contain an answer. History contained only warnings. When Evan found her, she was still there. He set down 2 cups of something hot. The steam smelled of coffee and roasted spice. Dessa ignored hers. Evan sat beside her. She pushed the list toward him. No one beat it. Evan read the names. No, it doesn't look like anyone did. No one even got close. No. She looked at him. Then what exactly are we doing? Evan thought about Sanctuary 7. People had asked that question there too. Why resist? Why hope? Why believe a door might ever open? He folded his hands. We're trying the thing nobody else managed. That isn't an answer. No, it isn't. Dessa's left frill-tip trembled. Evan touched it gently with one finger. She slapped his hand away. Don't touch that. Sorry. You always want to. I did it once. You think about doing it. Telepathy has made accusations extremely unfair. Dessa almost smiled, then her face crumpled. I don't want her to become one of these names. Evan put an arm around her. This time she did not object. Neither do I. You don't know whether we can stop it. No. Then don't promise. He nodded. Fair. Dessa leaned against him. After a while, Evan looked at the list and said, We'll find something else. How? I've had unreasonable luck with impossible problems. The amplifier began as a bad idea. Most dangerous devices did. Evan had learned enough engineering through necessity to be hazardous and enough caution through experience to hide that hazard behind good documentation. He combined Asteroid neural field equipment with a human medical pattern buffer and Varethi sensory lattice hardware, originally designed for rehabilitation after traumatic brain injury. The theory was simple enough to explain. His telepathy relied on some form of coherent neurological field. Increase coherence, increase range, increase control, increase power. The dangerous part was every word after increase. The workshop smelled of heated circuitry and polymer insulation. Cooling fans whispered through the equipment racks. A medical AI modeled the procedure. Probability of temporary neurological injury, 91%. Evan frowned. That's high. Probability of permanent cognitive impairment, 63%. Very high. Probability of catastrophic loss of autonomous function, 28%. Evan leaned closer. Define catastrophic. You would remain biologically alive, but incapable of independent thought or action. Vegetable. That terminology is medically obsolete. Still concise. Probability of death, 11%. Evan closed the simulation. 3 days later, Dessa found it. She unplugged everything. Leland arrived while they were still arguing. Evan. He stood beside the dismantled amplifier. Dessa overreacted. I pulled the main coupling out with my hands, Dessa said. You could have damaged it. That was the intention. Leland looked from the machine to Evan. What does it do? Dessa answered. It makes him powerful enough to destroy the crown. Leland's expression went very still. And what does it do to him? Dessa looked at Evan. He looked away. Leland's throat frills flattened. Give me the numbers. Leland. I asked for the numbers. Evan told her. She slapped him, hard. The sound cracked through the workshop. Evan's head turned. Dessa blinked. Leland shook out her long fingers. Ow, Evan said. Good. That was unnecessary. No, that was the least violence available to me. Dessa nodded. Accurate. Evan rubbed his cheek. Nobody is using it yet. Nobody is using it ever. That's not entirely your decision. Leland moved closer. Evan caught the faint scent of her hair oil, resinous and warm, entirely at odds with her expression. It is my mind you intend to enter. Evan stopped. That was true. Then I don't use it. Dessa narrowed her eyes. Promise us. Evan looked at her. I promise. He meant it. That mattered. Leland nearly lost control twice over the next month. Exercise helped less. Velesh helped less. The crown learned. It adapted. It began hiding from monitoring. It learned to imitate Leland's thought patterns well enough that Evan sometimes could not tell where one ended and the other began. One evening, after Leland had recovered from a 3-hour struggle for control, she and Evan sat in her kitchen. Dessa was asleep. The lights were low. Leland's hands shook. Evan made tea. The kettle hissed, and the smell of bitter leaves filled the small room. She watched him. You make terrible tea. You keep drinking it. Because you're large and emotionally fragile. That's thoughtful. He brought her a cup. Their fingers touched, both froze. Not because of telepathy. Pause, then emphasize, because the touch lingered. Leland's throat frills moved, not fear. Evan had learned enough Varethi by then. He looked away first. I don't read you unless you ask. I know. Ever. I know that too. Even now. Leland's voice softened. I know, Evan. He sat. She held the cup between both hands. After a while she asked, do you regret Marla? No. Do you miss her? Yes. That is inconvenient. People are allowed to miss things that ended. Leland considered. Humans make everything complicated. So do Varethi. We mainly make violence complicated. Fair point. She looked at him. What happens if we survive this? The question hung between them. Evan answered carefully, I'd like to find out. Leland's frills rippled. Then the crown whispered inside Evan's mind, she is making you weak. His face changed. Leland saw it. Is it here? Yes. What did it say? Evan held her gaze. Nothing worth repeating.
We hope you enjoyed Part 1 of The Black Crown. Part 2 is coming next week. Thank you from Starlight Stories.